But we very selfishly, and that's totally natural, we very selfishly want it to matter to other people in the way we want it to matter to other people, which is a, stupid way of saying that we want them to like about our art what we like about our art. Hey, I'm Demon Dev, and today I've been thinking a lot about art critique and just how complicated it is. And I wonder if maybe a lot of people don't see the complexity. I guess I talk about toxic mentalities a lot. I think, a very toxic mentality around art critique where there's this like, no bullshit, be blunt, destroy my work, roast me, give me the feedback, even if it kills me, kind of attitude from both ends, both on the receiving and the giving out, dishing out end, which is really interesting. Art, I think, is primarily about making something you care about or building up the skills that you can make something you care about and you hope will matter to other people in some way also. Very vague definition, but that's how I feel about it. And part of that is, of course, the artist's relationship to their own work. They have goals for it or dreams or, how they feel while doing it. One of the saddest things that I think that can exist and exists quite often is an extremely talented artist that doesn't love making art, or maybe there's a specific kind of category of art that they, want to enjoy making, but aren't recently or lately for some reason. I think that's a really sad thing because unlike a lot of jobs or work, art is still work, absolutely. There's a kind of spirit, self expression, and passion that society accepts about art that we don't necessarily accept about other fields, or it's not as obvious or universally appealing. And so, what happens that brings someone to a point where, maybe they've been making characters like in ZBrush or like the whole pipeline for years, or even maybe they just started and they're not enjoying it anymore, or someone drawing is struggling to get themselves back into the practice of like a daily 30-minute session. So what's going on? Well, there's a lot of factors. It's not just self-critique, but that's what I'm going to focus on for today. So what are some of the factors that maybe we should give a little bit more awareness and focus on? Well, there's no such thing as pure critique. I think it's a very toxic idea that a lot of people are very bold and aggressive about. No, that's not a thing. The closest we can come to pure critique is in an extreme setting, such as like an art panel where there's like a row of AAA artists and you have someone from the crowd at any level asking. That's a very special context because there is no relationship before or after. The art panels should probably be as kind as they can, but they are allowed to give very specific, very detailed critique. And I think that's as extreme as you can go as far as like, prioritizing having an impact on the art over what I would say normally the priority is the relationship. Now, people don't immediately accept this, so let me make my case for it. I think the relationship is more important than the critique. Number one, people will accept critique much more if they trust you or there's a relationship there to begin with. Most of the time, critique is happening in a very casual, non-structured, informal way between two people, usually fellow artists, but usually their focus is a little bit different from each other. I see that a lot everywhere, and I have my entire life for myself and many friends across all time. And I think that's ends up being one of the most valuable sources of critique because it's just convenient. It's there all the time. There's always people or friends around. If you have friends or you go to different community or groups that have people, people love to share their opinions, and generally artists like to hear opinions about their work. Um, of course, the positive ones are more fun than the negative ones, but there's a place for negative feedback. They could be like, oh yes, of course, I can make this better. So, anyways, what happens in those situations? Well, there's so many factors going on that get automatically evaluated. So, for example, Is the artist really killing it that day, feeling great about their work and feeling like they can maybe accept a little bit more brutal honesty is a common phrase. Are they struggling? Maybe they're really just trying to stay motivated and they're struggling to put pen to tablet. Um, Maybe they've got deadlines coming up and they're feeling really stressed about stuff. There's so much that can be going on that way, and that will hugely impact their ability to receive and process feedback, um, which I think a lot of people get really frustrated with. They're like, "Well, I'm just trying to give feedback. My motives are maybe not pure, and maybe some people think they are pure, but relatively pure. They are just reacting as naturally as they can and passing that on to the person." But no, even if the artist looks you in the face and says, "Give me the feedback," um, you know, tear my art apart. No, you must first prioritize the relationship. You have to care about them as an artist. Remember, most artists don't take care of themselves. They shit on themselves all the time. Even the egotistical ones are struggling internally. A lot of people think that there's a balancing act where people that are um, overly self-confident need to be ripped down. That's not a healthy way to change them either. Building a relationship of trust is always primary in any sort of consistent relationship or interaction with critique is always a first step before they can hear, before you can even align yourself with their goals. In some cases, the goal of art, especially when things get more stylized, or maybe there's a certain kind of like time limit they're trying to put into the work. There are some situations where the feedback needs to be more targeted, at least to align with the goals of the artist. There's a lot of, I think, unnecessary conflict when the artist has a specific thing that they're working on or trying to accomplish, and other people are inspired by their art, but inspired for that art to move in a different direction. And so in that case, it's no longer critique. It's more like suggestions and spin-offs like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. Which a lot of times artists don't handle very well. It's difficult. It's a really complicated experience to care passionately about what you're working on and then have someone get really excited about it, but want it to be in a different way, like to be changed in a way that you weren't anticipating. And maybe the more you think about, and you don't necessarily have a lot of time to think about it because it's a live conversation, maybe the more you think about it, you really don't like what they want your art to be. And that's really complicated because we do strive to get attention for what matters to us and we want it to matter to other people. But we very selfishly, and that's totally natural, we very selfishly want it to matter to other people in the way we want it to matter to other people, which is a stupid way of saying that we want them to like about our art what we like about our art. If we're making super muscly characters that are intimidating, you may want people to appreciate that about the art, and you may react relatively poorly if the person's reaction is like, "Oh, you specifically made the muscles like inconsistent with anatomy as like a, like to be funny." That might really hurt your feelings even if they're engaging with it in a very exciting and energizing way. So anyways, all I'm trying to say is that, yeah, art critique is complicated, and we need to let go of the idea that an artist needs to be a steel, a steel spaceship, I don't know, a steel door, stoic and devoid of attachment or I mean, I don't want artists to be defensive, okay? I don't want them to react in a hostile way to criticism. But I want us to simultaneously understand from the other side that it's not the artist's right to tell us how to interact with their work. And I say that mostly in the negative sense because most people, when they're artists asking people to interact with their work, they're saying, be brutally honest. And I'm thinking maybe we should disregard that. Maybe we should accept that we are social creatures and we have feelings and we are not just servants to the best possible art that someone can make. And that's all a, bullshit construction anyways, because even if you accept in one single situation that, you know, and let's not use a straw man anymore. Even if you accept one situation that being a little bit tougher on someone like, hey, you really need to go back to your forms and fix the structure. Even if we accept that that would make that art piece better, and mostly something like that would make most art pieces better, you should only get to that point after you've considered the relationship first. Um, which sucks because, the artist cares about the art, you care about their art, but you have to care about the artist more, I think. I think that would be much healthier. And I think it's the more I'm talking about it, the more of a radical and controversial opinion that I think this is. Maybe there's some settings where artists can accept more direct feedback. And I also believe this whole time I've been talking about limiting your feedback or, deprioritizing it. I think that sometimes the relationship is in a good place where you are able to be free and say whatever you're thinking. I see that happen a lot where people's relationships are in a good place and not only do pretty direct and sometimes, like that really hits people hard kind of things happen, but the person accepts it and acts on it immediately. They trade that respect back and forth. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think other people see that happen sometimes and want to skip to that. You don't get to skip to that. You need to care about the artist first. I think that's true. I think that's true. And again, pretty much most situations, most people are trading critique relatively casually with people in a similar discipline or just their friend group. And I think it's really valuable to get feedback from them. It can be tough. There's one of the many, many complicating factors is like, okay, is the artist more skilled, but maybe they have a blind side about their work? Is this person less skilled, but maybe they have some true insight that goes beyond some of the more technical considerations that someone more skilled would be like more focused on or in the weeds in. There's all sorts of complicated exchanges and it's a frustrating dance. You have something that you think could leave a really powerful influence that you want to say, and in the right situation, they'll hear it and act on it. And I'm not saying we have to be perfect either, but why not save that criticism for the right point in the relationship? The truth of the situation is it's an iterative, it's going to happen multiple times. You're going to have many situations. If someone asks you for critique once, usually they're going to ask again, unless it goes that poorly. Assume they're going to ask again. Assume they're going to keep making art, usually for the rest of their life. And what that means is the relationship is even more important than that specific art piece. And once the relationship is at a good point, then not only can you give the same feedback you would have, maybe even stronger feedback, maybe, it'll be more pleasurable for both people because they won't be judging whether this is an attack. They'll just be, working with you to explore everyone's feelings on it. And I think people see that happen. It's beautiful. And sometimes people take away the wrong conclusion, which is that let's just do that. Let's just have a relationship where we can be open with each other, but you can't skip the relationship part. I think that gets really toxic. And I think it leads us to the situation where a lot of artists have really difficult relationships to their own work because a lot of your relationship to your own work is how other people relate to your work and to you about it. For a lot of people, it's the primary source of identity and the primary source of, the respect they feel they get from their friends. Whether that's the case or not, most artists want that to be where they get respect from friends or colleagues. Sometimes it's more important from colleagues because you value their opinion in a different way. I think that it's just worth thinking about. And maybe don't jump to an evangelical place where you're like relationship first always and critique second. That's where I am, but you don't have to go to that extreme view, but maybe just consider, before you say whatever you're going to say, and maybe, you could be on the opposite end. Maybe you've just kind of you're a fatalist about critique and you just kind of avoid those scenarios or give people very limited encouragement, there's nothing evil about that. Sometimes you feel uncomfortable giving feedback because you just kind of have a sense that it's not going to get accepted or not going to go well, or maybe the artist will lash out, even in a mild way, can be really negative for the person trying to voice their own amateur opinion or even expert opinion. It doesn't always go well. Respect those feelings, I think, and just think about it the next time someone asks you to reflect on their work. Consider, how you think that person feels about their own artwork. You don't necessarily have to balance out someone's feelings, but just accept that because people are at a certain place with their stuff, there's a limit to what they can accept. And if you're being the smartest person you can be, you should give feedback that has a high percentage chance, greater than zero, hopefully, higher percentage of chance of inspiring the person to really take it seriously. Whether they acted on it or not is a secondary question. But you want to give critique that is respected. And it's bad also to give, direct critique that people resist and fight. That's not reinforcing anything positive for anyone else either, even though it's very frustrating to you. And maybe you have some serious gold that you're passing out for free that cost you like everything. I know that's really tough, but I do think the relationship comes first in most situations. So yeah, it's just fun, worth thinking about if you ever find yourself feeling frustrated about receiving critique, even though you know you need it, or giving critique, even though you know people are asking for it. All right, have a good one.